Hi there Waltoneers, I'm Jack and this is DSNY Newscast with a breaking news video. As you see today, senior Disney executives held a conference with Wall Street analysts and investors at Walt Disney World, where the main topic of discussion was to prioritize and focus in on the future of the Disney Parks and Resorts division. Now, in all honesty, I'm not going to bury the lead here, as the main headline coming out of all of this is that Disney has announced via an SEC filing, and through a press release on their corporate company website, that they are planning on nearly doubling capital expenditure investments into the Disney Parks and Resorts division worldwide over the next 10 years. Which means that they're planning on spending approximately $60 billion over the next decade. Which does sound very exciting and very promising. But let's dive a little bit beyond that headline and get into this in greater depth. As you see, when you hear $60 billion in the headline, it sounds like an absolute ginormous amount of money. But if you were to break that up evenly over the course of that 10-year period, it means that Disney is looking to invest on average around $6 billion into the Disney Parks and Resorts division if it was to be split up evenly over those years. However, that sum of money isn't just for the domestic Disney parks, but this has to also account for all of the capital expenditure investment for the 3 other theme park resorts around the world that Disney own, along with the Disney Cruise Line as well, which is currently constructing 2 more multi-billion-dollar cruise ships. So, when you look at it that way, the investment may not sound quite as impressive as the headline would have you initially think. Now look, at the end of the day, plans are all well and good, but what really matters here is whether Disney can turn that intent into action. As for an example, in 2021, Disney stated in an SEC filing that their intent was to spend $6.1 billion on capital expenditure investment within the Disney parks throughout 2022. But then the actual amount of money that Disney ended up spending was only $4.9 billion. And so even though this sounds very promising on paper, we've got to remain cautiously optimistic until we see some action. And then we also have to take into account some other key factors when assessing this $60 billion statement. As $60 billion over the course of a 10-year period for all of the Disney parks around the world may not go nearly as far as you think when you consider Disney's tendency to overspend on attraction projects compared to that of other theme park competitors. As for an example, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind is said to have cost around $400 million for just that one attraction. And that's even before we consider the fact that this statement is over the course of a 10-year period, which means that inflation might be eroding away at that total $60 billion sum of money over the course of 10 years. And then the last thing to consider about this $60 billion is that Disney earlier this year stated that approximately $17 billion was going to be invested in Walt Disney World over the next 10 years. So you've also got to take that sum of money out of that total $60 billion number as well. Which leaves us with $43 billion over the course of 10 years, or $4.3 billion if it's split up evenly. But despite all of that, just the very fact that Disney is even talking about the Disney Parks and Resorts division in this way is a positive step in the right direction, in my opinion, as it seems that Disney executives are finally acknowledging the parks segment as the reliable and consistent revenue generator for the company that it is, barring that of any exceptional circumstances like a global pandemic. And in turn, they are now wanting to put even greater emphasis upon the division, which I hope results in action and investment very soon. But in all honesty, there is a part of me that's a little bit skeptical over why Disney is wanting to highlight the Parks and Resorts division to Wall Street analysts and investors. And that could be because of the weak theatrical and direct-to-consumer business outlook in the near term, given the ongoing writers and actors strike and the softening in the subscriber numbers for Disney+. And if that was the case, then the announcement hasn't quite been met with the response that Disney probably wanted, as the stock has dropped around 3% upon hearing the park's investment news. And then there's another part of me that feels that all of this talk about the Parks and Resorts segment being such a revenue generator might be Disney looking longer term and setting up the division as potentially being spun off as its own individual company at some point in the longer term future, if the rumours are true and Disney can navigate the complex regulatory environment to sell themselves to Apple at some point in the future. But putting all of that to one side, the other part of this announcement that really piqued my interest is that Disney specifically stated that they have approximately 1,000 acres of land for possible expansion around the world, and they want to reach new fans, of which they estimate there are around 700 million fans that are not yet to be reached by the Disney parks. And apparently for every one guest who visits a Disney park, there are more than 10 people with a Disney affinity who do not visit the parks, so there's huge growth within the segment. But it's this part of the announcement that has me more interested than anything else. As you see, much like all of you, as a Disney fan, I'm more excited about hearing more about their longer term plans to expand their footprint. And this likely means that the Disneyland Forward proposal is more important to Disney than we first believed, as an expansion to Disneyland equal to the size of a third park looks increasingly likely and essential to their longer term plans. But then in terms of international, at Disneyland Paris, Disney has also long promised the French government a third theme park to be constructed at that resort, although they have continually pushed back their deadline, and it currently stands at some point in the mid-2030s. And there's obviously potential international growth to reach new emerging markets with a new park if Disney saw the right opportunity in the right location, and who knows, maybe some point in the more distant future we might also be talking about a fifth park at Walt Disney World, considering the pressure that Universal is placing upon Disney. But all of this talk of Disney's intention to spend billions of dollars within the parks division does remind me of one thing, and that is the Disney decade, which for those unfamiliar, it was a point in the early 1990s when previous CEO Michael Eisner announced huge investment and expansion plans for the Disney parks throughout the 1990s. But it all ended up being scaled back significantly because of the harsher economic times that were brought upon the company, through the struggling performance of Euro Disneyland, more difficult regulatory environments than they planned, and the acquisition of Capital Cities ABC within the company as well. So maybe this is shaping up to be another Disney decade kind of moment. But to avoid the pitfalls of that first blunder, one thing is for sure, and that is that the time for talk is over, and the time for action needs to begin very soon. But now, it's over to you, the Waltoneers. I would like to know, what are your thoughts and opinions about this news of the $60 billion investment today, and also where would you like to see the most amount of investment go within the Disney parks around the world in the next 10 years, whether it's Disneyland, the international parks, or Walt Disney World, and what kind of investment that would end up being. And if you've enjoyed this breaking news video for today, then be sure to subscribe down below, turn on the notifications, and check out the rest of the videos on the channel. And I also want to give a massive thank you to the Waltoneers over on the official Waltoneer Club on Patreon, and the Waltoneer Gold members here, and also Waltoneer Diamond member Kyle Mahan. And with all that being said, I've been Jack, you've been you, and I'll see you real soon.